Welcome to Bobby Owsinski's Inner Circle. I'm Bobby Owsinski, and this is a show all about music, music production, and the music business. My guest this week is songwriter and educator Andrea Stolpe. First of all, the social media universe in 2020. It's huge. There are 3.8 billion people worldwide now on social media. That's more than half the world. Now, the interesting thing is, these aren't just people that have downloaded the app. These are monthly active users. So social media is huge. But when I tell you the top 10 social media networks, you'll probably be surprised. First is Facebook. Of course, that kind of makes sense. WhatsApp is second. YouTube is third. Messenger is fourth. WeChat is fifth. Instagram is sixth. TikTok is seventh. QQ is eighth. Weibo is ninth. And Qzone is 10th. Now you're going to say, I never heard of a bunch of those. That's right, because you're not Chinese. WeChat, TikTok, QQ, Weibo, and Qzone are all Chinese social networks, and they're huge. Facebook has 2.6 billion people on the network. These are monthly active users. And you would think, well, US is probably the biggest user, but that's not true. It's actually India, 290 million people. In the U.S., it's only 190. Indonesia is 140, Brazil, and Mexico. So those are the top 5 users. WhatsApp has 2 billion people. YouTube has 2 billion. Messenger has 1.3. And Instagram has 1.1. WeChat, from China, again, is 1.2 billion. Now, the interesting thing here is Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram are all owned by Facebook. So Facebook has a monopoly on the top 5, but China has a monopoly on the bottom 5. Now, what's interesting here is I haven't mentioned Twitter, I haven't mentioned Reddit, I haven't mentioned a lot of social networks that we're kind of used to here in the United States. And that's because we're talking worldwide here. So things are quite different out there. Just because you know a social network really well, just because your fans may be in that social network, it also means that there may be a lot of other people out there on other social networks that can be your potential fan as well. If you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@bobbyoinnercircle.com. You can also sign up for my free vocal mixing techniques mini course at bobbyowsinskicourses.com and download free ebooks and PDFs on mixing, production, mastering, and social media at bobbyowsinski.com/free-resources. Now, if you remember 100 episodes or so ago, I talked about the fact that guitar sales were way down. They're down by 33%. This is in 2017. And the future of the electric guitar especially was kind of in doubt. We don't have modern guitar heroes like we used to have. There aren't as many garage bands. And it made you think, well, wait a second, what's actually happening with the electric guitar? Believe it or not, COVID has been great for guitar playing in general. Fender, Taylor, Martin, and Gibson are all having record years. As a matter of fact, this is the biggest year in Fender's history. Online guitar instruction is huge. Fender Play, their instruction app, went from 150,000 users to almost 1 million in 3 months. Now, it turns out that 20% of guitar buyers are under the age of 24, and 70% are under the age of 45. 45% of all guitar buyers these days are female, and guitar manufacturers are selling everything that they can make. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. First of all, we've had a lot more time during COVID, during the pandemic. Second of all, guitar playing is therapeutic. There's a calm that playing will give you that's kind of in the middle of the digital storm. So it feels good to do this. It feels good to focus your mind on something that's physical, that gets you away from a computer screen. The big question here is this going to last? Now that we're all slowly getting back to work, are the boom times for guitar going to last? We shall see, but all I can say is that guitar awareness and guitar playing is coming back around again. It's a great instrument. It's an easy instrument. It's an instrument that doesn't require a lot of maintenance, and it's an instrument that will last a lifetime. That's a pretty good buy in my estimation. My guest this week is songwriter and educator Andrea Stolpe, who's written songs for Faith Hill, Julianne Hough, Daniel Lee Martin, Jimmy Wayne, and others. She's also worked as a staff writer for EMI, Almo-Irving, and Universal Music Publishing. Andrea teaches songwriting at the University of California's Thornton School of Music and is the author and instructor of Berklee College of Music's online course, œCommercial Songwriting Techniques. Her book, Popular Lyric Writing, 10 Steps to Effective Storytelling, offers songwriters a practical approach to lyric writing according to each writer's unique voice and the ability to finish songs with greater ease and consistency. She also offers songwriter retreats both online and in person. During the interview, we talked about what it means to be a staff writer, the songwriter as a producer, if the lyrics or the music should come first, placeholder lyrics, and much more. I spoke with Andrea via Zoom from her home in Los Angeles. Well, let's go back to the beginning. Tell me how you get started in the music business.
Well, I was very, very lucky. I found Berklee College of Music when I was 18. And so right out of high school, I knew that, if I was going to give this music thing a try, I should go there. And that was back in 1995. So there really weren't other programs that were available at that point, like there are now in the popular music industry. So I went to Berklee, and like a lot of folks who go to Berklee, it's the faculty members that introduce you to what kind of a career you could possibly have. And so that's what took me to Nashville, and fell in love with the idea of being paid to write songs. I mean, who gets to do that? So, the thought of being an artist in the industry was overwhelming, to say the least. I had no idea. How would you just go out and be an artist? What does that even mean? And so being a songwriter was kind of my plan A as I figured things out. So I went to Nashville, and at that time, worked as at a couple of temp agencies, and at the same time just wrote with everybody that I could. And then from there, ended up getting a deal, staff writing deal. And so that's how I got my start. And honestly, it was kind of no fault of my own that I got the deal too. It was my husband who worked at Mars Music at the time. And he always carried a cassette tape of mine in his back pocket. And whoever would come in buying pro audio, who looked like they knew what they were doing, or at least had the means, he'd give them one of my cassette tapes. And so one of the songwriters who bought gear from him actually listened to it and gave us a call back and said, I think there's something there. I don't know what to do with her yet, but let's just meet and talk and see where you're at.
Tell me about your staff writing gigs. I'm curious, what does a staff writer actually do?
Well, the neat thing about being a staff writer is also the tough thing. Is it's your job to basically understand the brand of an artist and write for them, write something that they can't write on their own, And so, in the Nashville industry, of course, lyrics are a main driver of the songs that we write. And so a good part of that job is to put yourself in as many writing situations in which you can write, of course, songs that are accessible within Nashville and crossover pop market, which means that lyrics are your friend. They have to become your friend pretty quick. So as a staff writer, my first deal was with EMI Music Publishing, and I wrote, I had a perfect situation because another songwriter signed to EMI, signed me. So I had a co-pub deal. Part of my publishing went to EMI, the other part went to the seasoned writer there who was overseeing what I was doing. So he and I wrote together weekly. And then I also wrote with as many other writers as I could. And then every month or so met with my song plugger there who was assigned to me. And we would talk about the songs, edit the songs, talk to the publishers of the co-writers on my songs, and determine which songs we should demo that he would plug. And over the course of a year, of course, at that time, I think my contract was I had to turn in 12 whole songs. So a collaboration would count as, half or a third, whatever my part was, and deliver. So I was there for 2 years, and I got dropped like a rock from that deal. Which is pretty common, right? You don't usually, your first deal is a bit of a stepping stone. At least back then, the beauty of 1998 or 99 was that you could spend some time developing and trying to understand what is this market, what does that mean to write in a country music realm. I, for one, had never grown up listening to country, so it was all about the craft of writing for me. And that was the challenge, was really to understand, how does what I do connect with what's culturally relevant in this genre.
How long did it take before you felt that you were good at what you're doing?
Oh gosh, how many years has it been? I don't think I feel like I'm good at what I'm doing yet. I'm constantly getting more critical, more and more critical, more understanding more and more where problems are resulting in the songs that I write, and when to let go and just let things lie. So I think part of being good is determining what is going to connect with the listener. And sometimes, in terms of lyric writing, a watered down, not to be a negative thing, just chillin' vibe in the lyric with a great groove is exactly what I need to be writing. And sometimes a really dense, sensory lyric that tells a great story with a very minimal, or let's say, just very diatonic or four chord progression is exactly what I need to write. So I used to have the sense that if it's not complicated or hard to write, then it's not good. And I think once I got over that and just started to think about, well, what would I write if I really enjoyed what I was listening to, what I was writing, what would that sound like? That's when I started to feel like I was getting good at what I was doing. And that took a long time.
I've known a lot of professional songwriters. I've written with some of them, but I don't never consider myself even close to it, or a songwriter for that matter. But there was a different work ethic. And what was interesting was the fact that the real pros that I know are always working, and they're always collaborating, and there's always something going on, and there's not so much of a break ever.
Yeah.
So how do you develop that work ethic?
Oh man, it'll drive you crazy, right? Well, how do you develop that? Not having a plan B, that's a good way, right? You got to eat, so you got to make music. I think the idea that writing with that kind of a work ethic has to be obsessive. For some folks, I think it is. For me, I'll get in a zone where I write in short bursts, and I'm just as effective, if not more effective, than if I do 5-hour stretches. And I think I didn't get to that point until I absolutely had to, till I had family. Then it was impossible. I couldn't go out and write anytime I wanted and do those long stretches and drive to Glendale and then, hang out at the studio till 2 a.m. It just wasn't happening. So for me, I had to think a little bit more like an entrepreneur and think, well, what can I do to become more efficient and effective with the time that I do have? And so that involved becoming more clear about the tools I was going to use, the craft I was going to use. Before, I had time to just fumble around. Now I have to title carefully. I have to choose my groove carefully. Do I really want to work on this project? Is this going to be it for me for today? I do exercises like a 15-minute brainstorming which is completely separate from the editing of the song, puzzling together the pieces. And so the creative process is what I focus on a lot more. And I have a much more of a framework than I ever did before. Whereas before it was more artsy and I would just go with the flow. Now I have specific goals for each session where I sit down and I say, I'm going to write this verse and chorus in 20 minutes. And that's what it's going to be. So that helps, as there are quite a lot of specific exercises we can do to frame the amount of time that we have and get something down rather than waiting for the next bolt of inspiration to strike.
One of the things I've always noticed is really good songwriters are also really good producers because they have to do really good demos in order to sell the songs. That's not an easy thing to develop because you have to be a really good producer and an arranger. The songs just sound great right from the top. But that's also a skill that takes some time to learn.
It is a skill, and I have not ever pursued developing that skill to the degree to which I've pursued being a songwriter. And so I think that there's certainly an element of joy in the coming up with production ideas or having production ideas, but I prefer to work with people who are as skilled as producers as I am at songwriting. To me, that's the ultimate situation. And I do that through getting tracks from other people. I do that through starting to write a song and then taking those bits that I have and playing an album in the background and reimagining my bits over that bit. And so it's being influenced by other people's art because it's really an undue amount of stress to say I'm going to originate something production-wise with my songs that would even rival, what some of my favorite producers that I get to work with would do.
Okay, here's a question for you. This is probably the age-old question. What comes first, music or lyrics? And I ask this for a reason, because there's so many successful songwriters that will do the music first and will put placeholder lyrics there and develop them later. So where do you come down on that?
So that definitely is the age-old question, and people ask it for different reasons. Some people, how can I be more effective? How can I finish more songs? I'm tired of not finishing songs because, when you write the music first and you're in love with your music, it's just, you don't want to, nothing you can squeeze in there lyrically is going to satisfy this great music you've got. And sometimes we have the opposite problem. Ultimately, I would love for my music and my lyrics to come at the same time and marry seamlessly, but that's not always a reality either. The way that I like to look at it is that some songs begin for me with the leading element. So some songs are simply melodically driven, and I come up with a melody and I love the melody, and now I have to come to that space where I decide, is the placeholder lyric, is what I'm coming up with in a reasonable amount of time satisfactory? Because very, very few songs that I listen to are hitting a 10 out of a 10 in terms of melody, lyric, groove, vocal performance, just chord progression. I mean, we try to get, we try for those magical moments as much as possible, but there can be no magic whatsoever if I don't finish and demo the song. So whatever comes first is usually what I feel most competent writing. When I hear songwriters nowadays, who play, you can almost tell sometimes what they started with. You can hear lyrics crammed into spaces they can't fit in, or you hear a really dull melody but the lyric story, they're saying what they want to say. And ultimately, how do you gauge? There's Springsteen songs that I love musically, and there are songs that clearly the melody takes a back seat. Atlantic City, it's just one note. But who's to say that one note isn't exactly what it needed? Because the lyric is what I'm focused on at that moment in time.
I have a pet peeve against 1-4-5 songs.
You do?
Yes, because it seems lazy to me. It just seems like it's so obvious. But that being said, there are songwriters that can make you forget it's a 1-4-5 song. Or there are songs that are like that I realized later, oh, well, that's what that was. Geez, why didn't I notice that before? But there's some that are so obvious, it just seems like this is lazy to me.
Yeah. 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 I mean, thank God for the 1-4-5. Tom Petty wouldn't have a career. The word in songwriting that we use is prosody. Prosody is this funny little word that just describes the agreement between the musical message and the lyrical message. And sometimes that 1-4-5 can come across trite, like you said, lazy, and not at all express the message that we feel is there in the lyric. And so the music is always, always going to trump the lyric. The music tells us how to feel the lyric message. And the lyric message is never gonna say to the music, yes, I understand you feel dramatic. I understand you feel this, but I'm saying this. It's not gonna happen. And so when that's happening, I think, the songwriter is not keying into the soul of the lyric and really asking, how does this message sound musically? We're just probably relying on the chords that we know and the cadences that are familiar to us instead of exploring that idea.
Well, let's talk about you as a teacher for a second. I know from my experience, and I teach recording and mixing and stuff like that. Yeah. And what happened to me is there came a point where I began to think deeper about it rather than everything being intuitive. You begin to think, why is this the way it is? So when did that happen for you, where you began to analyze the process of what you're doing?
I still sit and peel away layers and realize the connections between elements of songwriting. For example, I used to just rhyme 2 words and feel very lucky if the right word came up and it happened to carry the right consonant and vowel sound. Now I realize there was a lot more going on with rhyme. Rhyme creates closure. It says these ideas are finished. This agrees. Very much like a cadence musically. Perfect rhyme, cat, hat, is like 4 to a 5 to a 1. But cat and mad is like flat 6 major, 5 major, 1. And the more you pull at these words, the looser the connection and the more body language that's there in the message. So then you start looking at songs like Don Henley's End of the Innocents, and you start to see these rhymed words and length of lines where the rhyme comes earlier than you expect or delayed, not where you thought it would be. And you start to realize, oh my gosh, it's just this. I was never aware of that body language. I was like a foreign exchange student, ambling through the halls of the high school, writing my little songs, and that's what they sounded like. It was like someone from another planet trying to emulate how these people act and, and speak. And so over the years, picking apart these tools, wondering why a 2 major chord is so effective right before you go into a chorus. And then I try it out one tool at a time. And also being married to a mix engineer helped a lot with different influences and musical interests, and recognizing that a lot of the same things he's controlling through mixing are some of the same ideas that I'm trying to control through songwriting. But it's a constant process, constantly, because every song I write and every song I listen to from other songwriters is a problem to solve. It's a situation I didn't expect to find myself in, where I can solve it melodically. I can solve it rhythmically. I could solve it with a chord. I could, and so I find that so interesting and just freeing to work through that in my own songs, but also with other people. and help them understand the variety of ways that they can approach any situation that they're in that feels like a straitjacket. What if you didn't rhyme? What if you didn't rhyme at all? What if you left your chord progression unresolved? Where would that take you? So it's really amazing.
Well, I was just going to ask you, though, is rhyme necessary? I think you kind of went over that, but sometimes it seems to me, again, it's forced. And a forced rhyme is no fun. A forced rhyme sounds forced. It's just like, couldn't you spend more time and figure something else out?
Right. No, I absolutely agree. And we know it, right? So much of what I do as a teacher is calling out the songwriter on things that he or she already knows. When you're just not being honest, and your character, whether it's I or you or whatever the point of view, is just not believable at that moment anymore. We just don't want to look at it because we'll come up with all kinds of excuses. Well, Katy Perry did it in this song and that happened, and this happened. Yes, but at the same time, what if we had tools that we could use to fix it? Wouldn't that be great? If it didn't take 5 hours. And that's one of the troubles with, when we get feedback from folks, when we get critique from a publisher or other songwriters, it can be a deflating experience because the critique most often comes without a tool on how to fix it. I used to go home thinking, oh my God, how, I got to start over. How could I possibly iron out this storyline when there's so many things that seem to be going wrong? So anybody can tell you what's wrong, with what you've created. And I think the key is, like you asked about rhyme, is to just become aware of where you feel uncomfortable when you're playing your song for someone else. That's the first, play it for somebody and notice when you wish you could disappear. That's a problem area. Take a look at what's going on there. And the more we sing things, the more we convince ourselves that it's okay. So it's that first indication that something's not right. That's the voice to listen to.
How difficult is it to teach songwriting?
Well, apparently it's pretty difficult because I've ran across quite a lot of, a lot of us will say the same things over and over again. There's wonderful books out there, many books on how to write and song form and, everything, rhyme and rhythm and all of that. I think what's really helpful, once you've written the box, once you understand section from another, once you've explored how do I organize a story? How much of the story can I tell without it being too much? Where do I begin? After you've written 20 or 30 songs, let's say, then I think a lot of the work is not so much about how to write that hit song, because there's a lot of tutorials, right, about how to write a hit. And that's writing in the box. But once you've written the box, then it's kind of like, well, what is unique about my process? What can I leverage about my process to make my songs stand out and feel like they're me? So for me, I know that despite having gone to Berklee, despite I grew up as a classical piano player, and I was fine. I did my hour a day of practice and whatnot, but was never going to be even near good enough to go towards a career in performance. Similar to that, I've spent 25 years trying to understand why lyrics work. And I'm still missing pieces of it, of course. But what's really challenging, I think, is to help people understand what they're doing and, again, options. So even this idea of use more sensory language in your songs, that would be something a publisher might say to try to teach writing. But how do you do that? How do you know what sensory language to include? How do you know where in the song to put it? And so that requires, I think, just a lot of listening and observing and feeling. How do we tell a story at all? Well, you don't end with the small detail. You end with the summarizing thought. It's the same thing with songs. So I think there's a lot of listening and just a lot of quiet observance that goes on. It should go on before anyone would even begin to teach songwriting, unless you're just going to say, here are the hit songwriting tools, take it and run with it and see where it takes you.
Now, I know you teach at Berklee Online and also USC.
Right.
At what level are your students at?
So I have them all. I have a couple of sections of songwriting one people. So they are psychology majors, business majors, neuroscience, pre-med, who want to be connected to some level of creativity in their life. And I so much enjoy teaching that class because we start from nothing, and so there's a whole world of playfulness we can have. The other section of songwriters that I teach at USC are on track to go out, and many of them get deals before they leave our program at USC. So they are very, very good. And we get about 450 applicants for the program at USC, the pop music program. And we take about 5 to 7 songwriters and the same amount of bass players, keyboard players, drummers. So it's a very competitive program. But again, their track is to go out and be popular music performers, really, performers and songwriters in the industry. And then for Berklee Online, again, I love that cross-section of folks because they're people with life experience who either they didn't get to do music, they weren't encouraged to do it, life took them in other directions. And the ability of those folks to relate their life skills to their songwriting skills and receive critique and do something with it is wonderful. So I can often get very honest with my adult students in a way that I have to be careful with my 19-year-olds.
One of the things that seems to happen in our business that a lot of schools don't understand, I think they're starting to come around, but if you're in this business, you're an entrepreneur by nature because you're making your own work. You have to do it because if you get a gig, it's going to be short, if that. And you just mentioned your staff jobs, for instance, where it's short contract. And I always felt that most of the schools don't emphasize that enough. They emphasize the craft and maybe the art, but not the entrepreneurship. Is that part of your program?
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful point. We do talk about at USC the ebb and the flow of the industry, how things have changed. But even if I think back to when I was 20, 22, I had no idea and I didn't care. I was just going to go out there, guns blazing, and make my own trail. But I had a lot of folks in the industry that were telling me that, it's feast or famine. And, and it goes in cycles and it's unpredictable and all of that. I think that a lot of our students quickly respond to that and maybe even understand that a bit before they go out by diversifying. So many songwriters have their hands in different pots where they're, under normal circumstances, they're doing a fair bit of performing. They're playing in not only their band, but someone else's band. They're interested in sync licensing opportunities as well as staff writing opportunities. And we really emphasize connection. The stronger your network and, like you said, entrepreneurial, that win-win, how can I contribute rather than what can I get, is core to what we're trying to create, I think, at USC, and certainly what I want to create in my retreats that I run, is a strong alumni community where people can support each other, even if it's just playing your new release for folks, and feeling like you can get some feedback on steps, refining your business plan, refining what should I do in the next 60 days to push this forward.
I'm glad you mentioned your retreat. That's the next place I wanted to go. So tell me about your online retreat.
Sure, sure. Well, the online retreat was never in the plans. The plan was to be doing physical retreats at this point. And I had never done physical retreats on my own before. I've been part of some wonderful retreats in the past, Swananoa gathering, different gatherings that offer a songwriting craft aspect, but never on my own. And so I felt that it was a need to offer these week-long retreats with many of the tools of the craft and writing opportunities and connection that I've been teaching at USC and Berklee and learning from people who've gone before me. So I felt like there was this hole in the industry for really strong craft teaching. I think that there's wonderful teaching on inspiration and creativity. And, in a retreat situation, you always feel so good when you come back from one. And there's all this great energy that most often just kind of fades. So this idea of, I keep coming back to, yes, but what are the tools that you're going to be able to gather in a retreat? It's got to be more than just the question of what inspired this song. Key into that. Who are you as an artist? It's certainly important. I'm not the one to necessarily teach that. I don't feel like that's enough because as a educated musician and songwriter, we can go into depth with our songwriting craft just as much as we could in traditional harmony 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's just that these tools that are sometimes hard to access from books because the one of my favorite books is Pat Patterson's Writing Better Lyrics, and it's an awesome book, very, very dense and very tough to explore all of these craft tools on your own without being in a circle of other writers who can give you feedback and try these things out. The retreats that we do online, and even more so in our week-long physical retreats, it's pretty heavy on the craft of writing and really getting people to turn a corner and have so many more tools to problem solve, along with an alumni community that and myself and my team that you can rely on, for years after to keep that momentum going.
You've been doing these before, but physically, right?
We have not done a physical retreat. We were scheduled to start in March of this year. And of course, in March, everything got shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we moved them online. We thought, well, what can we do? And the online retreat is a Friday night through a Sunday evening. And so it's a lighter version, certainly, of the physical retreat, which would be 5 days and in person, of course. But in the online retreat, we do mastermind sessions where we do some song coaching, one-on-one in small groups, and then larger group teaching on some lyric writing concepts and melody concepts that are just good foundational skills to have.
How does COVID play into all this since it's more difficult to be in the same room with people? How does that play into it?
Man, well, we've been doing a lot of, like everybody, right? Remote writing sessions. I've been getting a lot more tracks from people lately and sending over bits and pieces of ideas that then they'll build tracks off of and send them back. It's been interesting. I feel like because everybody is on the same page of this is the way it has to be, then we sort of accept it and move on, and we're productive despite the times. And I'm not sure we would have gotten there had this not happened. So it kind of removed the elephant in the room and just said, well, we got to get it done. And I'm very curious to see if in the future we continue to collaborate this way, even if we have other options. But I got to say, I will be very happy to get back into the room with songwriters at retreats, because there's just something that a personal quality that's difficult to bring.
What's the best piece of business advice that either someone imparted to you or you learned along the way?
This one comes up immediately. Follow the talent. Don't follow the Grammy. Don't follow the big ego. Follow the talent. So, I mean, ultimately, hanging around the songwriters that you love, that you think, man, there's something that they're doing that I don't bring, and I love it, and I want to understand it better, or just be part of it somehow. If I had taken inventory of what I do and what I don't feel comfortable doing or don't do very well, I would have not tried to do everything on my own. I would have been writing with studio session players that I just gelled with because it was fun, whether or not they're songwriters or not. Instead, I was in the room with people who had big names, and sometimes I'd be like, why am I here? What is, there's no chemistry going on here. So I think that would be it. Follow the talent. I budget time now. I'm pretty introverted, so it takes quite a lot of energy for me to get out and do the things that I know I need to do. So I literally have my time blocked out on my calendar to be extroverted. I'm going to go and I'm going to write with this person, and that's, and suggest that 3-way with this other person that, on my own, maybe my writing style wouldn't necessarily be enough to keep the energy in the room. But I budget those times when I know I can't, when I know that maybe I'm not following the talent that I understand quite now, but I know it's a good business decision for me to get into that room and do that project. But ultimately, talent attracts talent. If you keep doing the things that musically get you excited, it's about longevity and persevering in the industry. Like we talked about before, it goes like this. You never know. So, but if you put yourself in situations that result in good music, what you think is good music, it'll come back around.
You can find out more about Andrea at andreastolpe.com. That's Andrea, Andrea. Stolpe is Stolpe. That's all one word, andreastolpe.com. Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@BobbyOInnerCircle.com. To listen to other episodes of Bobby Owsinski's Inner Circle, go to BobbyOwsinski.com, select the podcast tab, or go to BobbyOInnerCircle.com, or you can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Mixcloud, Google Play, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, TuneIn Radio, Radio Public, and Podbean. At BobbyOwsinski.com and BobbyOInnerCircle.com, you'll also find a sign-up form for my newsletter and for alerts for new podcasts. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time.